Medieval farmers swore by roots that fed entire villages, yet most of them have slipped from memory, even though they still grow today. What made these 15 forgotten crops so essential in their time, and why did they quietly disappear from our tables? The story begins with a root we all recognize, but not in the way medieval farmers did. Carrots weren't always orange. Medieval farmers knew something we've almost forgotten. The original carrots were purple, yellow, and white. Orange carrots basically crashed the party centuries later and convinced everyone they were the original guests. However, these colorful roots saved lives during harsh winters. While other crops failed, carrots sat patiently in the ground waiting to be dug up. They didn't need perfect soil either. Poor, rocky dirt? No problem. Carrots thrived where other vegetables gave up. Meanwhile, medieval families relied on these roots to prevent scurvy. The high vitamin A and C content kept immune systems strong when fresh fruits disappeared for months. Smart farmers planted carrots early and harvested them late. Some could stay buried until spring, naturally preserved by cold soil. Furthermore, the different colored varieties weren't just for show. Purple carrots contained powerful antioxidants that modern science now recognizes as beneficial. Yellow varieties packed beta-carotene that supported eye health during long, dark winter months. Beyond nutrition, preparation was simple but effective. Throw them in stews, boil them for soups, eat them raw for quick snacks. Medieval families learned that younger carrots tasted sweeter while older ones became perfect for cooking. Medieval farmers were basically running a rainbow vegetable collection before anyone thought colorful food was trendy. But these weren't the sweetest roots hiding underground during winter months. Parsnips were the medieval world's secret weapon against starvation. When snow buried everything else, these pale roots waited underground like buried treasure. Plus, frost actually made them sweeter. Indeed, medieval cooks discovered something magical: cold-converted starches to sugars, creating natural dessert that sustained entire families. Peasants and nobles alike shared roasted parsnips that tasted like honey. Even better, the survival strategy was brilliant. Leave them in the ground all winter. Dig them up when needed. No storage problems. The earth became their personal freezer, keeping parsnips fresh and ready. Moreover, these roots packed serious nutritional power. High fiber kept digestive systems working during months of preserved foods. Potassium supported heart health when physical labor demanded everything from medieval bodies. One parsnip could turn a mouse-sized piece of meat into what felt like a royal feast. Additionally, medieval farmers discovered that parsnips actually improved in flavor after several hard frosts. The freezing and thawing process broke down tough fibers while concentrating natural sugars. Smart farmers planted parsnips in spring and completely ignored them until winter desperation struck. These roots didn't demand attention like other crops, yet some roots proved even tougher when winter hit hardest. Turnips grew where nothing else would. Rocky soil? Perfect. Clay dirt? No problem. Medieval farmers called turnips the survival root because they thrived in impossible conditions. These vegetables were like stubborn relatives who showed up uninvited but ended up saving the whole family. What's more, the versatility was mind-blowing. Eat the root raw for a peppery crunch. Cook it into soft, filling chunks. The leaves worked as fresh greens when vegetables disappeared from markets. Even livestock got fat-eating turnip scraps. In addition, medieval families planted different turnip varieties for different purposes. Small, fast-growing types provided quick summer meals. Large storage varieties grew slowly but lasted through entire winters. When expensive crops failed, turnip patches saved the day. Nevertheless, properly stored turnips lasted months in root cellars. They provided crucial carbohydrates when grains ran low. When other vegetables needed pampering like spoiled nobles, turnips rolled up their sleeves and got to work. Besides basic nutrition, turnips served as excellent filler food that stretched more expensive ingredients. Medieval cooks learned to dice turnips finely and mix them with small amounts of meat. Harvesting timing determined storage success. Turnips pulled too early lacked full nutritional development. Those left too long became woody and bitter. But speed wasn't turnips' strongest feature. Another root claimed that title. Radishes were the speed demons of medieval gardens. Ready in just weeks, these spicy little roots filled the hungry gap between winter storage and summer harvests. When other vegetables were still sprouting, radishes were already feeding families. Naturally, quick growth made radishes perfect for impatient medieval families. Plant them in early spring when soil barely warmed up. Harvest them before other crops sprouted first leaves. This speed created multiple harvests per growing season. At the same time, medieval gardeners discovered the spicy kick served important purposes beyond flavor. Sharp taste indicated high vitamin C content that prevented scurvy. Antioxidants fought infections when medical care meant praying and hoping. Besides nutrition, freshness made radishes special. When preserved foods dominated medieval diets for months, fresh radishes provided crisp texture and bright flavor. They were like tiny alarm clocks that woke up sleeping taste buds after months of mushy stored vegetables. Furthermore, radishes required almost no garden space, making them perfect for crowded medieval plots. Farmers could tuck radish seeds between slower-growing crops. Medieval families also discovered that radish leaves were edible and nutritious. Young radish greens added a peppery bite to spring salads when fresh vegetables were scarce. However, some medieval roots offered flavors that transported families far from their humble gardens. Salsify earned the nickname oyster plant because medieval cooks swore it tasted like seafood. Landlocked families could enjoy something resembling ocean flavors without traveling hundreds of miles to the coast. For medieval peasants living nowhere near water, Salsify was basically a magic trick that brought the sea to their dinner tables. Furthermore, the unique flavor made Salsify prized in medieval gardens starting in the 14th century. Wealthy households served it at special dinners to impress guests. Poor families treasured it as a rare treat that broke meal monotony. Also, storage capabilities kept Salsify valuable through winter months. Properly stored in cool, dry conditions, these roots lasted months without spoiling. High inulin content aided digestion during periods when preserved foods caused stomach problems. Medieval gardeners appreciated Salsify's reliable growth habits. Long taproots grew deep, accessing nutrients other plants couldn't reach. Salsify proved that medieval farmers were the original food innovators, creating gourmet experiences from humble garden plots. Additionally, Salsify plants produced beautiful purple flowers that medieval families appreciated beyond food value. Preparation methods required patience but delivered impressive results. Medieval cooks learned to scrape rather than peel Salsify roots to preserve maximum nutrition. Yet another root offered benefits that went far beyond unusual flavors. Horseradish packed enough heat to clear medieval sinuses from the next village over. This sharp-flavored root served double duty as condiment and cold medicine when winter illnesses struck hard. If fire-breathing dragons had existed, horseradish would have been their breakfast cereal of choice. Clearly, the medicinal reputation made horseradish essential in medieval gardens. Grated fresh, it provided vitamin C that prevented scurvy during long winters. Natural compounds acted as antibiotics when infections threatened to turn minor cuts into life-threatening problems. Still, growing horseradish required minimal effort, which suited overworked medieval farmers perfectly. Plant it once in poor soil and forget about it. Roots spread underground, creating larger patches each year. Drought conditions? No problem. Medieval cooks used horseradish to salvage questionable meat. The strong flavor masked the taste of meat that had seen better days. Medieval families learned that horseradish was like having a spicy security guard for their food, tough, reliable, and always ready to fight off trouble. Moreover, horseradish roots could be harvested year-round when needed. Medieval families learned to dig up portions of roots during winter months. The preservation methods were simple but effective. Grated horseradish mixed with vinegar created a condiment that lasted months without spoiling. But horseradish wasn't the only plant that protected medieval families from disease. Garlic grew in every serious medieval garden because smart farmers understood its incredible value. Beyond adding flavor to bland meals, garlic bulbs contain natural compounds that fought infections when medical knowledge consisted mostly of prayer and guesswork. Medieval families basically discovered nature's pharmacy centuries before anyone figured out what germs were. Next, the growing process couldn't be simpler. Plant cloves in fall. Ignore them through winter. Harvest bulbs the following summer. Each planted clove multiplied into entire bulbs, creating exponential returns on minimal investment. Additionally, storage systems made garlic invaluable for long-term survival. Properly dried bulbs lasted 8 to 10 months without spoiling. Braided into ropes, garlic decorated medieval kitchens while providing ready access to flavor and medicine. Medieval cooks used garlic to stretch expensive ingredients. Adding chopped garlic to small meat portions made meals feel more substantial. While medieval doctors charged fortunes for treatments that didn't work, garlic provided real medicine that grew for free in backyard gardens. Furthermore, garlic cultivation required no special tools or techniques. Medieval farmers could grow garlic using the same basic farming methods they used for other crops. The antimicrobial properties saved lives during plague outbreaks, while other medieval treatments failed completely. Speaking of plants that thrived without attention, another root mastered the art of growing wild. Burdock grew wild in neglected corners where nothing else would survive, making it the ultimate medieval freebie. Smart farmers recognized this large taproot's potential when properly harvested young. While other vegetables demanded constant attention, like needy pets, burdock was the independent cat that fed itself and still provided dinner. Meanwhile, medicinal applications made burdock valuable beyond simple nutrition. Medieval healers used it to treat various ailments. High fiber content aided digestion during periods when preserved foods caused stomach problems. Accordingly, harvesting required timing and technique. Young burdock roots were tender and edible. Older roots became tough and bitter, fit only for livestock feed. Medieval families learned to harvest in early spring when roots contained maximum nutrition. Wild growth habits made burdock a reliable backup food source. When cultivated crops failed due to weather or pests, families could forage burdock from uncultivated areas. This root was basically medieval insurance that never required premium payments, but always paid out when needed. Moreover, burdock seeds provided additional food value that medieval families learned to appreciate. The seeds could be roasted and eaten like nuts. Medieval farmers eventually learned to cultivate burdock intentionally rather than relying solely on wild patches. Another root offered multiple benefits from a single plant. Beets provided medieval families with multiple foods from a single plant. The roots supplied natural sugars and minerals. The leaves worked as fresh greens when other vegetables cost too much at market. Getting 2 vegetables for the price of 1 seed was like medieval farming's version of a 2-for-1 sale that never ended. Thus, medieval varieties included both sugar beets and red table beets, each serving different purposes. Sugar beets provided concentrated sweetness when honey prices soared. Red beets added color and nutrition to winter meals that would otherwise look disturbingly gray. On top of that, nutritional profile made beets essential for medieval health. High iron content prevented anemia during periods of poor nutrition. Vitamins A and C fought off diseases that killed thousands annually. Medieval cooks discovered beet juice made excellent natural dye for foods and fabrics. Growing beets required minimal skill, making them perfect for beginning gardeners. Medieval families learned that beets were like getting a vegetable starter pack, roots for storage, leaves for fresh eating, and natural food coloring all in one package. Additionally, beet cultivation could happen in multiple seasons. Medieval farmers planted early varieties in spring for summer harvest. Different preparation methods maximized beet nutrition and flavor. Raw beets provided crunchy texture and maximum vitamin content. But some medieval roots served completely different purposes in the kitchen. Chicory roots became medieval coffee when real coffee cost more than most families earned in a month. Roasted and ground, chicory provided a bitter, satisfying drink that helped medieval workers start difficult days. Before expensive imported coffee existed, chicory was the wake-up call that got peasants through sunrise to sunset workdays. Obviously, cultivation spread across Western Europe during the 14th century as demand for coffee substitutes grew. Wealthy households might afford real coffee occasionally, but chicory kept working families caffeinated year-round without bankruptcy. Simultaneously, fresh chicory leaves added bitter complexity to salads during spring and summer months. Slightly sharp flavor balanced sweet roots and bland grains that dominated medieval diets. Growing chicory required minimal effort, which appealed to overworked medieval farmers. Hardy plants grew in various soil types without demanding attention. Medieval families discovered that chicory was nature's way of saying, "You don't need to be rich to feel awake in the morning." Furthermore, chicory flowers provided beautiful blue blooms that medieval families appreciated for decoration beyond food value. The roasting process required patience and careful attention. Medieval families learned to roast chicory roots slowly over low fires, Yet another root provided surprising amounts of food from underground patches, medieval farmers. Hardy plants grew in various soil types without demanding attention. Medieval families discovered that chicory was nature's way of saying, you don't need to be rich to feel awake in the morning. Furthermore, chicory flowers provided beautiful blue blooms that medieval families appreciated for decoration beyond food value. The flowers could be used to make natural blue dye for clothing and household items when commercial dyes were expensive. The roasting process required patience and careful attention. Medieval families learned to roast chicory roots slowly over low fires, turning them frequently to achieve even browning. Properly roasted chicory developed rich, complex flavors that closely resembled expensive imported coffee. Different parts of chicory plants serve various purposes throughout the growing season. Young leaves made excellent spring salads, while mature roots provided winter beverages that sustained families through cold months. Yet another root provided surprising amounts of food from underground patches. Jerusalem artichokes weren't from Jerusalem and weren't related to artichokes, but medieval families didn't care about confusing names when these tubers provided serious nutrition. Medieval plant naming was apparently handled by the same people who later decided pineapples looked like pine cones, but the food value spoke for itself. Consequently, tubers grew underground like buried treasure, but contained natural sugars instead of starch. This made them easier to digest for families whose stomachs were sensitive to heavy foods during winter months. Carbohydrate content provided energy for heavy physical labor that defined medieval life. Furthermore, harvesting happened in late fall when tubers reached maximum size. Unlike other root vegetables, Jerusalem artichokes could stay buried all winter. Frozen ground preserved them naturally. Medieval farmers appreciated how these plants spread naturally. Once established, Jerusalem artichokes created larger patches each year without replanting. These roots were like medieval savings accounts that grew interest underground while families forgot about them until withdrawal time. Besides human consumption, Jerusalem artichokes provided excellent livestock feed when hay supplies ran low. The frost resistance made Jerusalem artichokes reliable even during harsh winters that destroyed other food sources. Another medieval root provided intense flavors that transformed simple meals. Animal feeding requirements to maximize value. The preparation methods varied based on family size and cooking resources. Raw Jerusalem artichokes provided crunchy snacks similar to water chestnuts. Roasted tubers developed sweet, nutty flavors that satisfied dessert cravings when sugar was expensive. The frost resistance made Jerusalem artichokes reliable even during harsh winters that destroyed other food sources. When ice killed above-ground vegetables, these tubers waited patiently underground. Another medieval root provided intense flavors that transformed simple meals. Lovage roots added powerful aromatic flavors to medieval soups and stews when expensive spices cost more than most families earned in weeks. This plant returned each year from the same root system, making it a permanent flavor investment. While spice merchants charged prices that would make modern luxury car dealers jealous, lovage delivered gourmet taste for the cost of dirt and water. Alternatively, nutritional content made lovage valuable beyond simple flavoring. High vitamin A supported eye health during long winter months when natural light disappeared for weeks. Vitamin C fought infections when medical care consisted mainly of prayer and wishful thinking. Therefore, medieval cooks learned to use lovage sparingly because flavor was intensely strong. A small piece of root could transform entire pots of bland winter soup into flavorful meals. The perennial nature made lovage perfect for long-term garden planning. When your dinner menu consisted of boiled something, followed by more boiled something, lovage was the flavor wizard that made everything edible again. Additionally, lovage plants grew larger each year, providing increasing amounts of flavoring material without replanting costs. Different parts of lovage plants served various culinary purposes. Young leaves could be used fresh in spring dishes, but medieval gardens also featured roots that served as complete meal foundations. Celery root, also called celeriac, looked like something created during a particularly creative agricultural nightmare. The knobby, twisted appearance hid incredibly useful nutrition that sustained families through harsh winters. If vegetables entered beauty contests, celery root would win the most likely to scare small children award while secretly being the most helpful contestant. However, cultivation began during the 14th century when medieval farmers discovered this root's exceptional storage capabilities. Properly stored celery roots lasted months in cool, damp root cellars without spoiling. This longevity made them invaluable when fresh food disappeared. In contrast, medieval cooks learned to work with celery roots' tough exterior. Peeling required sharp knives and patience, but interior provided creamy flesh, perfect for winter soups and stews. Growing celery root required patience because it developed slowly throughout growing season. Celery root taught medieval families that ugly vegetables often hide the most beautiful nutrition inside. Moreover, celery root thrived in heavy soils that challenged other vegetables. Medieval farmers could plant celery root in clay-rich areas where other crops struggled. The vitamin content provided essential nutrients when dietary variety was severely limited. Vitamin K supported bone health during periods of reduced sunlight exposure. Yet another medieval root proved even hardier and more filling than celery root. Rutabaga emerged during medieval times as nature's hybrid experiment between cabbage and turnip, creating a super root that combined the best qualities of both parents. Medieval plant breeding might have been accidental, but results fed entire families through brutal winters. When Mother Nature decided to play vegetable matchmaker, she created the ultimate winter survival food that nobody expected but everybody needed. Specifically, frost tolerance made rutabaga legendary among medieval farmers. While other vegetables surrendered to the first hard freeze, rutabaga roots became sweeter and more delicious as temperatures dropped. Cold weather converted starches to sugars. Above all, medieval families learned to appreciate rutabaga's incredible size. A single large rutabaga could provide multiple meals for entire families. High vitamin C content prevented scurvy during months when fresh fruits cost more than most families could afford. Growing rutabaga in poor soil made it perfect for medieval farming conditions. Medieval families discovered that rutabaga was like having a vegetable superhero in the garden, tough, reliable, and always ready to save dinner when everything else failed. Furthermore, rutabaga storage required minimal special equipment. Medieval families could store rutabaga in simple root cellars or even buried in outdoor pits. Medieval farmers appreciated rutabaga's reliability during unpredictable weather patterns. When other crops failed due to drought, flood, or pest problems, rutabaga patches continued producing. But medieval gardens included one more root that modern families have almost completely forgotten. Skirret provided medieval families with sweet white roots that tasted like nature's dessert when properly prepared. These thin, long taproots grew easily and stored well, making them valuable additions to medieval survival gardens. While modern candy requires factories and processing, Skirret delivers sweetness straight from the soil like Earth's original sugar factory. Essentially, sweetness came naturally without processing or additives that didn't exist in medieval times. Boiled or roasted Skirret roots provided dessert-like satisfaction when sugar cost more than most families earned in months. Natural carbohydrates supplied energy for hard physical labor. Similarly, medieval gardeners appreciated Skirret's easy growth habits. Plant once and harvest for several years. Perennial nature made it perfect for long-term garden planning when establishing new crops required significant time and effort. The popularity peaked during medieval times when families needed every possible food source to survive harsh winters. Unfortunately, Skirret gradually disappeared from common cultivation as other crops became more popular. Skirret was like the medieval world's best-kept secret, a sweet treat that grew reliably but somehow got forgotten when easier options appeared. Additionally, Skirret roots could be dried and stored for extended periods, creating natural candy that lasted through entire winters. Medieval cooks discovered that Skirret mixed well with other roots in winter stews, adding natural sweetness that improved overall meal satisfaction. These 15 forgotten roots represent centuries of agricultural wisdom that modern families are just beginning to rediscover for their own survival gardens.